The jukebox rattled out Johnny Cash as smoke curled beneath the tin ceiling of Louie's place. Bikers juiced the air with laughter and hate, mechanics swapped war stories, and two crutch-bound Vietnam vets nodded to the beat. At the bar's heart, Gene "Dog" Larson, tall, freckled, freshly cocky from his Texas run, leaned back on his stool, chest puffed like a shotgun blast. Then he saw her, a slim woman in coral pants that hugged every line, her yellow sweater glowing in the jukebox's neon. She leaned over the counter, oblivious, speaking softly to Louie. Dog's grin split his face. "Check out that peach, man," his buddy hissed. Dog wove through the crowd, swagger in every step. He landed behind her and slapped her hip like a prize. "You alone tonight, sweetheart," he rasped. Silence slammed the bar. The woman turned. In the jukebox light, Dog froze. He'd just slapped Priscilla Presley. Let us know where you're watching from, and we hope you enjoy the story. Elvis Presley eased onto a creaking bar stool at Louie's place without a word, the worn leather sighing under his weight. The joint was tucked away on the fringes of Memphis, a sanctuary for bikers looking for cheap beer and old war stories, far from the showroom glitz and the gawking crowds. At 10 o'clock on a steamy summer night in 1971, the air inside buzzed with cigarette smoke and the low drawl of Johnny Cash crooning "Folsom Prison Blues" through the jukebox's crackle. Several dozen patrons, leather-clad bikers, radio mechanics from the station down the road, two green-uniformed Vietnam vets leaning on crutches, occupied the scratched wooden tables. Their laughter roared over the bar's tin ceiling, boisterous and unguarded, like men who'd seen too much to hold back. Elvis preferred it that way. Raw, unpolished life without a script. At the center of the room, under a lone naked bulb dangling from the rafters, a man called Gene "Dog" Larson held court. He was tall, gangly in a denim vest that rode high above his hips, and his once dark hair was flecked with gray. He'd returned from Texas weeks ago with a swagger that filled every corner of the bar. He towered over his pals, powerful arms folded across his chest, as he recounted a bar brawl in Amarillo that had left him sporting a fresh scar above his eyebrow. Dog's laugh was loud, brash, and as full of hot air as a busted steam engine. "Check out that peach, man," Larson's best friend, Shorty McGraw, murmured into his ear, nodding toward the bar. Dog followed the gesture. Across the room, a woman stood at the far end of the oak bar, her back to them. Light from a dusty window framed her figure. Tight coral pants that hugged the curve of her hips, a mustard-yellow knit top that softened the edges of her silhouette. Hair as dark as the Mississippi mud swished over her shoulders. A single strand caught the glow and reflected like a spark. Dog spat a red, thick stream of tobacco juice into the ashtray. He set down his beer. "Watch this." He swaggered up behind her, hips swinging with calculated arrogance. The bar's chatter dimmed for a second as he reached out and slapped her backside with a resounding crack. He threw his head back in a wheezy guffaw. "You all alone tonight, sweetheart?" In that heartbeat of silence, gunslingers calm before a duel, the woman turned. You could have heard a nickel drop. Her features emerged in the amber light, cheekbones as sharp as river stones, eyes so blue they cut like ice, and lips set into a firm line. She stared at him without blinking. "Elvis's girl," someone muttered at a table near the back. Dog's smile faltered. At the end of the bar, the bartender froze mid-wipe, towel in hand. In the corner, the Vietnam vets exchanged a look. Dog took a step back, his confidence flickering like a candle in the wind. He mumbled, "I was just—" The woman's voice came quietly, cold as a tomb. You just made the biggest mistake of your life." 20 minutes later, Dog Larson's bravado had evaporated into sober dread. He nursed a bourbon on the rocks at the far end of the bar, and each swallow left him more hollow. Word had spread like wildfire. Elvis's girl was Priscilla Beaulieu, fiancée of the biggest star in the world. If Elvis Presley wanted vengeance, a biker bar on the edge of Memphis was hardly a fortress. The bar's jukebox flipped to Jackson. Dog's palms grew sweaty on the glass table. His friends had slipped away quietly. No cheers, no jeers, just a silent understanding that he'd crossed a line. The two veterans hunkered low, watching him with seasoned eyes. They'd learned that humiliation could deaden a man more surely than a bullet. Then the door swung open with a soft whoosh, and the notes of Elvis's entrance skimmed the room before any spotlight could. He stepped in wearing a black wool jacket over a crisp white T-neck, dark slacks that swirled around polished loafers, and those infamous aviator shades. He didn't need the shades to conceal his eyes. The bar's dim lights were enough, but they added to the aura, a legend cloaked in quiet menace. His presence silenced the bar more effectively than any shotgun. The air felt thicker, as though gravity had shifted toward him. Behind the bar, the only sound was the faint drip of taps. Even the jukebox stuttered, as if its needle trembled at the scene. Elvis moved slowly across the hardwood floor, measured steps that creaked underfoot. Each thud echoed in Dog's temples like a pistol shot. Men rose from stools and chairs, all eyes riveted on the stage-struck figure. No one spoke. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Elvis didn't glance at the jukebox, nor did he nod to the bartender. He locked eyes on Priscilla for a moment, her gaze a cool mirror in the twilight. Then he turned, his attention settling on Dog. The biker's skin crawled under that steady stare. No malice, no theatrics, just a man looking at you as though he could see every scar you'd earned and every lie you'd told yourself. Dog's throat worked. He tried to lift his gaze to meet Elvis's eyes, but found himself pinned by the weight of silence. The world had contracted to that single stretch of floor between them, Elvis's black loafers and Dog's scuffed boots, barely 3 yards apart. Elvis stopped a foot from the bar, hand hovering near his coat. Dog expected a sneer, a punch, a roar of challenge. Instead, Elvis lifted a finger to the brim of his shade and spoke in a voice softer than Dog would ever have imagined. Yet each word landed like lead. "You think a slap and a laugh makes you a man?" Dog's knees trembled. The bar remained silent, the only counterpoint a single glass shattered behind him as an onlooker's errant movement knocked it from a table. Elvis didn't flinch. He took one last steadying breath, then did something neither Dog nor any eyewitness expected. He folded back the lapel of his jacket to reveal a black belt weaving through his trousers' waistband. In the soft overhead glow, Elvis's pose shifted. No longer the crooner in black shades, but a man made of muscle memory and unorthodox grace. Muscles coiled beneath the jacket. His lips parted slightly, an exhale of calm that sent a tremor through Dog's adrenaline. One sharp, fluid motion followed. Before Dog could think punch, Elvis's knee drove into his solar plexus. Dog's breath fled in a rush of pain. The world pitched. He slumped against the bar's edge, vision speckled with red and brown. The chair behind him clattered as he collapsed, hands splayed on the sticky floor. The bar erupted then, a collective gasp, a dozen curses, the veterans leaping at the bar to steady Dog's sagging frame. Priscilla rose, moving to Elvis's side, her expression unreadable. Elvis removed his foot from Dog's back and turned, every eye following as he strode out. Elvis didn't pause for applause. He didn't bask in the fear or respect. He walked away in silence, long strides down the plank floor aisles, past overturned stools and stunned faces. Outside, the night air waited, warm and still. He slipped into Priscilla's black Cadillac Fleetwood with the grace of a man accustomed to weighing every step. From the doorway, Dog watched the tailpipe's red taillights vanish down the road. His ribs burned with each breath, but the pain was secondary to the scorching awareness that he had been dismissed, disarmed, undone, all without violence for show, but with a single matter-of-fact strike that spoke louder than any roar. Behind him, the bar's din returned, though tinted by something new. Respect born of witnessing true, quiet strength. Humility steeped in mastery. The world, at once, felt smaller and larger than before. And in that humid Memphis night, Elvis Presley reminded every soul in Louis' Place that dignity wasn't claimed with swagger. It was wielded in stillness, precision, and unflinching control. The old jukebox had fallen silent the moment Elvis Presley walked back through the swing doors of Louis' Place. Even the hum of cigarette embers seemed to pause as he stepped into the amber glow of the barroom's overhead lamps. Priscilla sat at the far end of the counter, her posture straight and unyielding despite the chaos that followed Dog Larson's mistake. Now, guests shuffled aside, hunters giving way to a lion, leaving a clear path from the door to her. Elvis did not rush. His black jacket hung loose across broad shoulders, the wool catching the light in faint highlights. The white of his T-neck was still crisp beneath the crease of his collar. He moved with deliberate calm, each footstep whispered over the scratched pine floor. The roar of tension swelled behind him like surf against a cliff. Bikers, mechanics, veterans, all frozen in place, watching the legend approach. At Priscilla's elbow, the bartender remained motionless, arms braced on the bar. Elvis paused only long enough to brush a strand of her dark hair away from her neck. His hand landed softly on her shoulder, an unspoken reassurance, a claim of protection. Priscilla tilted her head just enough to meet his gaze, her blue eyes reflecting relief. But there was no gratitude in her glance yet, only the knowledge that a greater reckoning was about to unfold. Elvis turned then, his attention sweeping the room and resting on Dog Larson slumped at the bar's edge. Dog's breath came in shallow, rattling gasps. Every man in the room instinctively stepped back. Elvis slid onto the stool opposite him, folding his hands across the counter with a quiet authority that demanded the space around him. The fluorescent light overhead trembled slightly in the haze of cigarette smoke, throwing rough shadows across Dog's face. Elvis leaned forward, voice low enough only for Dog to hear. "You want to talk about women, boy?" His tone was conversational, no bravado, no challenge, yet weighted with an expectation that pressed on Dog's chest harder than any fist could. Dog sniffed, wiping at his reddened lip. He attempted a scoff, a hollow echo of the confidence he'd worn just minutes ago. "Look, man," he began, voice thick with defiance. "I didn't—" Elvis raised a hand, palm outward. "You think slapping her makes you a man?" His words were patient, cutting through the haze of liquor and testosterone. "I know who you are, Gene Larson. I know about that busted meth charge when you were 19. I know your mama had to bail you out. Bought you that first Harley so you wouldn't come crawling back home begging. I even know you ran off to Texas to hide from your own shadow." Dog's bravado flickered, as though Elvis's knowledge of his past burned away the shield he'd wrapped himself in. He swallowed hard, eyes flickering across Elvis's face, searching for anger, finding only unblinking resolve. Elvis drew a slow breath and let it go. The bar's ambient noise buzzed back in, a glass clinking at a nearby table, a bar stool creaking, a cough from the corner. One of Dog's biker buddies, no ally, just another spectator, stepped forward. "Hey, man, say you're sorry. Own up, apologize," he urged, voice tight. But Elvis was already standing. He laid a final look on Dog, cool, unflinching, devoid of triumph. Then, in a motion so swift it blurred at the edges of vision, he unbuttoned his jacket and swung it aside, revealing the black belt of his Kenpo dojo. The collective breath of the room halted as he settled his feet and coiled his body. Ready. There was no grunt, no winding up, no flourish. From his stance, his right knee shot forward, a piston through the quiet air. The strike hit Dog just below the sternum, a solid, precise impact that expelled every ounce of breath from the biker's lungs. A single sound echoed, a sharp crack of ribs against flesh, followed by Dog's body crumpling over the bar stool, sliding to the floor in a heap of denim and pain. For a heartbeat, only the jukebox ticked where it lay dormant. Then the room erupted. Shouts of alarm, the skitter of chairs, Priscilla's gasp. Elvis did not linger. He scooped his jacket back onto his shoulders, buttons snapping into place, and turned without looking back. His carefully polished loafers whispered over the boards as he strode through the parted crowd, a silent tide ebbing around him. Priscilla rose as he reached the door, offering an arm. He took it without a word, and they slipped out into the humid night. The roar of Harley engines greeted them, a slow wake of respect rather than jeers. Dog Larson remained on the floor inside, clutching his chest, whispering curses that dissolved into groans. Outside, Elvis paused under the neon glow of the Louis Place sign. He glanced back at the open door, shadowed by men who dared not meet his eye. Then he turned to Priscilla, sliding behind the wheel of her black Cadillac Fleetwood. As the engine purred to life, he exhaled, shoulders easing for the first time in hours. "I hate violence," he said softly, eyes on the rear-view mirror. "But some men don't understand anything else." Priscilla nodded, voice gentle. "Thank you." They drove away, leaving behind a bar forever changed by a single measured blow, and a lesson that real strength is not in cruelty, but in the resolve to defend dignity, even when silence is the heaviest shield of all. Elvis eased the Cadillac Fleetwood onto the deserted highway, the engine's gentle hum the only soundtrack beneath the humid Mississippi night. Priscilla sat beside him, her coral trousers muted in the dashboard's amber glow. Neither of them spoke as the city lights gave way to swaying fields of cotton and darkened farmhouses. The aftermath of Louis' Place hovered between them, unspoken, yet as present as the night air drifting through the cracked window. At first, Priscilla's hand rested lightly on Elvis's forearm, fingertips brushing his skin with unvoiced concern. He drove with deliberate calm, each turn signal click and anchor against the adrenaline still thrumming in his veins. Finally, she cleared her throat. She began, voice soft, then paused, as though searching for words that could capture the moment's weight. "You didn't have to come." Elvis's knuckles whitened briefly on the wheel before he relaxed his grip. "No," he said quietly, eyes fixed on the road's faint center line. "But I wanted to." Her breath hitched. "I was fine." The single lantern's glow from the bar's entrance flickered through his memory. Her startled face, that ice-cold warning. "I could have handled him." He glanced at her, caught in the reflection of the side-view mirror. The light in her eyes was still dancing, tremulous, fierce, relieved. "He thought he could treat you like a piece of meat," Elvis said, voice low and edged with something close to sorrow. "I couldn't let that stand." She exhaled, leaning back. "Thank you." He nodded, veering down a narrow lane that led home. The mansion's silhouette emerged against a star-freckled sky, pillars bathed in moonlight. Elvis switched off the radio. Priscilla reached across and turned off the dash lights. They drove the final quarter-mile in blackout quiet until the Cadillac's tires crunched the gravel drive, then stopped before the fountain's still water. Inside Graceland, the halls were hushed. Staff long gone to bed, save the night nurse tending to baby Lisa Marie. Elvis and Priscilla moved through familiar corridors, footsteps muffled against the Persian rugs. The weight of the night pressed in, a potent mix of justice served and the lingering sting of violence's necessity. In the music room, the grand piano stood sentinel beneath a velvet canopy. Elvis crossed the room, hands dropped to the keys. Priscilla followed, drawn by the instrument's promise of release. He sank onto the bench, body heavy with the night's tension. His fingers lifted, hovering above ivory in the dim light. Then he played, softly at first, a deliberate cadence that spoke of weary resolve. The melody wove through the room, gentle arpeggios that blossomed into the first bars of Spanish Eyes. A song of longing and quiet pride. Priscilla leaned against the closed lid, arms folded, head tilted as she watched him. When the last chord faded into the stillness, Priscilla stepped forward and sat on the edge of the bench. Her voice trembled with emotion. "You didn't have to do that." Elvis slid from the bench without breaking eye contact. He faced her, shoulders squared, but eyes soft with exhaustion. "No, I didn't. But I couldn't stand by." His gaze drifted past her, to the closed door, to the silent halls. "Some men only learn one lesson." She reached up, brushing a curl from his forehead. "You're my strength," she whispered, voice too hushed to carry beyond the two of them. "And I?" She swallowed. "I'm proud of you." He exhaled, a slow, controlled letdown. "I hate violence." The words were more a confession than a statement. "It always costs more than I expect." He paused, weight shifting. But some affronts leave no choice. Outside, in the street beyond the bar's neon afterglow, the bikers had lit up the night with their taillights as they hauled Dog Larson to his battered Harley. His roar of defiance had dwindled to a whisper, each labored breath a testament to ribs fractured by a single, precise, delivered blow. His buddies propped him up, arms around shoulders, but their faces were masks of silent shame. An old man who'd seen the war, gray hair spiraled from under a battered helmet, approached them. The flicker of a cigarette tip traced his face in momentary light. He laid a gnarled hand on Dog's arm and spoke as much to the night as to the biker. "That's what happens when you mess with a real man's woman," he said, voice gruff but steady. "Not because he's Elvis, because he's a man." Dog's head bowed, tears and blood mingling on his cheek. He did not speak. No words could restore the taste of bitter irony that lingered where pride once thrived. Back in Graceland's silence, Elvis and Priscilla shared a quiet smile, heartbeats synchronized in mutual understanding. In the hush after conflict, they found a peaceful concord, the contrasting truths of love and protection, honor and restraint. Violence had been the instrument, but mercy and respect held the ultimate victory. As dawn's first light drifted through the draped windows, Elvis held Priscilla close, a promise in his arms, a vow in the lingering echo of piano keys. The world outside might tremble with chaos and testosterone, but within these walls, two hearts beat to a rhythm unbroken. The gentle power of a man who would defend what he loved, and a woman who knew, in that single night, the depth of his devotion. Elvis Presley's intervention that humid Memphis night faded quickly from local legend to whispered cautionary tale among Louis' Place regulars. But, For Jean Dog Larson, the aftermath would ripple through every dusty bar stool he ever trusted. In the weeks that followed, Dog tried to reclaim his lost swagger. He swaggered down side streets, lifted heavy weights in his garage, and rode aimless miles under the scorching Tennessee sun, chasing the illusion that his bruised ribs and battered pride could be mended with speed and sweat alone. One late summer afternoon, just past the halfway mark before Elvis's next tour leg, Dog received a neatly typed letter sealed in a plain manila envelope. No return address. Inside, in crisp black ink, he found 2 sentences. "I hope you've found your lesson. E.P." His chest tightened. The signature, simple initials, sealed his own humiliation and forced him to revisit that pinned moment behind the bar. Dog folded the paper slowly, his pulse spiking with the old ache of ribs that still throbbed after every breath. He stared at the wall of his modest apartment, old posters of outlaw movies peeling at the edges, feeling more exposed than ever before. He showed the letter to no one. Instead, he retreated into an uneasy solitude, drifting back toward Louis' place each night, nursing a pint of flat beer while the jukebox crackled vintage country tunes. At first, his old companions eyed him with a mix of pity and wariness. He offered the standard jokes, clumsy attempts to mask shame, only to be met with silence or averted gazes. Dog realized too late that respect lost its power to shield you. Your own mind did the real damage. One evening, toward the end of August, Priscilla Presley reopened the door to Louis' place. The room fell instantly still. The scent of stale beer and fried onions clung to the air, but every man in the bar turned, posture stiff, as though Elvis himself had returned again to claim vengeance. Priscilla walked to the counter in her simple summer dress, a soft blue cotton that caught the fading amber light. No jeans this time, no loud colors, just a woman who carried herself with quiet dignity. She nodded to the bartender, who cleared his throat and set a glass of iced tea before her without a word. The regulars watched, some rising slowly to their feet, tipping their heads in a gesture of respect. Not out of fear, but because they recognized strength when they saw it. A strength that needed no grandstanding, no threat of violence, only presence and principle. Priscilla sipped her tea, her gaze drifting to the far corner. There sat Dog Larson, alone at the end of the bar. He wore a faded black t-shirt and leaned forward, elbows on the rail, staring at the floor. Fresh scars marred his ribs. Every inhalation and exhalation was a reminder of a point proven far too late. A hush fell as she laid a single dollar on the counter and turned. Dog looked up, eyes sharp with vulnerability. His mouth opened, closed, words unsaid hovering between them. She offered no smile, only a nod, as if to say, "I see you. I know you." The bartender cleared his throat, breaking the spell. He slid a pint of amber ale across to Dog, without looking at him directly. "On the house," he said gruffly. Then he added, as if reading the room, "He didn't ruin your life." "You did." Dog stared at the froth, then raised the glass in a solemn toast to no one. The men who'd once roared their approval at his brashness now quietly returned to their stools and tables, resuming their conversations with cautious distance. The jukebox resumed its slow country lament, and Priscilla's chair creaked as she rose and walked out into the humid night. Outside, beneath a canopy of cicada song, Dog sat alone on the bar's creaking porch swing, the amber glow from the windows framing his silhouette. He lifted the glass and studied the foam swirling like regret in the bottom. The letter's words from Elvis burned behind his eyes. No scorn, only that final punctuation. A period. Plain and unavoidable. He set the pint aside and closed his eyes. In the hush of his failure, Dog sensed something new, a faint, stubborn seed of accountability. It wasn't glory, never had been, but the recognition that real men learned from mistakes, not hide from them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small scrap of paper, the note from Elvis, folding it carefully and slipping it into his shirt. Behind him, the bar's neon sign flickered, casting long shadows across the dusty road. In the distance, a lone engine rumbled. Another rider passing by, untarnished by shame. Dog Larson rose, unsteady but determined. He took a final drink, left the empty glass on the railing, and stepped into the night. By the time Elvis took the stage at the Las Vegas Hilton the following week, the echo of Folsom Prison Blues had already faded into the ringing of applause. But, in a quiet corner of Memphis, a biker bar had learned a lesson of another kind. A cautionary tale carried not in bruises or scars, but in the silent grace of a woman who walked in dignity and a man who rose again, not by force, but by facing the weight of his own actions. Strength, they realized, was never about the final blow. It was in what remained after the pain. The choice to stand tall in the aftermath, the courage to let humility guide you home.